Wow. Charlotte and Lou, you gave us so much to think about and shared so much beauty, important ideas with us. Charlotte, you talked to us about not taking for granted what we have, about being grateful. You talked to us about the practice of gratitude enabling us to see what we have, recognizing our plenitude and sharing it. And having becomes responsibility for giving. The relationship between gratitude and sacrifice is that. We sacrifice when we're aware that we have a lot. And when we feel gratitude, we look for ways to give it, to give what we have. Sacrifice and giving of yourself, whether that's of your time or your bladder or your attention to God, to great oneness, to what's bigger than us, to causes that we believe in. This is eternal. It transcends that time in our people's history when we killed animals to do that, as you taught us, Lou. In a previous draft, which was the one I read, you had talked about the idea of imagining sacrifice that doesn't involve brutality, imagining sacrifice that is about love. And actually, your drash today felt to me like it was pointing us in the direction of love. I got an email actually 2 Tuesdays ago, not this Tuesday, but the Tuesday before, from UJA Federation. And the email came in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and it said that I haven't had until 4 o'clock to let them know if I wanted to get on a plane to Warsaw to go to the border of Ukraine to be of help. And somehow in that time, I figured out how to clear my calendar and say yes. I did not want to go. I really did not want to go. I wanted to stay in my safe and cozy house. I wanted to stay far away from a war zone. Even if in my head I knew for sure the right answer was yes, I didn't in my body feel that that's what I wanted to do. And getting that call made me realize that I had responsibility and that I actually had the ability to do something. Maybe even if it was small, and that I have a position that I can use for good, and that I should make a small sacrifice of my own comfort and sense of safety to try to have any impact, little impact. So I put out the call to this congregation because we were told that we could bring humanitarian aid. We were already bringing, each of us, there were 19 rabbis on this trip, and we were each bringing a maximum size bag of medical supplies from an organization called AFIA, which packs medical supplies for places where there's crisis. But we were each able to bring an additional bag. And so I put out the call to this congregation because we heard that people there needed diapers and feminine hygiene products and underwear and some basic things. And so I put out the call and it came flooding in. You all donated so much aid. We're also a collection site, so it all is going to get there, but it was definitely more than I could carry. And I found out that there were other rabbis who didn't have the maximum baggage allowance, and so I ended up being able to bring 6 massive bags in addition to the medical supplies. And what I want to tell you is that when I got there, I found that your contributions made a direct difference for people. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I saw and what I experienced there. So first of all, the medical supplies we brought to the border. There's a border crossing at the Polish town of Medica, and there's an Israeli organization called Natan, which goes to places where there's humanitarian crisis and brings doctors, and they work with the local doctors, and they create clinics. And in this case, they were bringing medical supplies into Ukraine, into the war zone, into the hospitals. And they told us that our supplies, there were 20 bags of medical supplies, would be at a Ukrainian hospital within 24 hours. And then we got an email the next day telling us that they had been delivered. The humanitarian aid that you supplied, we went to a transit center for refugees that is on the road between Warsaw and Lublin. And it used to be, it will be again probably a Jewish summer camp, but it has been totally turned in no time into a refugee transit center where people on their way somewhere could have a place to sleep, could get food, could get water, and could get the things they need. And when we got there, what we found out was that in Poland right now, the store shelves are empty because everybody is coming out to help the refugees, and they're buying up everything in the stores and giving it to people. And so you can't actually get diapers, and you can't actually get tampons, and you can't actually get Advil. And so the things that you packed, that you sent with me, went directly to people right there who wouldn't have been able to have it otherwise. So I need you to know that. And we are continuing to be a collection site, and I encourage you to continue to bring things here. We're talking about sacrifices, I saw sacrifices that looked like love everywhere I went. I saw countless people who just dropped everything in their lives to take care of the refugees who were coming in to Poland. I saw people who transformed their organizations and turned their community centers or their hotels or their Airbnbs or their houses into refugee centers. Many, many, many Poles have opened their homes. Like really a big percentage of the country has just opened their homes to refugees. And one of the things that was so poignant was seeing that the Jewish community of Poland was at the front leading edge of a lot of this effort. Now, the last time I was in Poland, actually, was with our then 11th graders. Lucy was one of them. And we went to go to Poland to see the devastating destruction of our people in history. We went to the concentration camps, and we went to the Warsaw Ghetto. And going there this time was so surprising, because we also saw when we were there before, we saw the Warsaw JCC, we saw the Krakow JCC, we saw the emerging Jewish community rising out of the ashes there, that was building Jewish life against all odds, even though the entire population had been destroyed. People had come back and were building Jewish community. Well, this time what I saw was they put all of that to use immediately to take in refugees, to serve people, whether they were Jewish or not. We saw an entire network of Jewish organizations who were stopping everything to just care for people. And this reversal, we're in this week was Purim, it was this nahafochu, this reversal, this flipping of that history. Here we were in the place where we were destroyed, where the place of our death, acting for life. And so the JDC, the Joint Distribution Committee, which is an international Jewish agency that just provides humanitarian aid, has a network of organizations throughout the whole region, Poland, Ukraine. They have 18 centers in Ukraine, and all of that has been put to use. There's an organization called Project Kesher, which has been supporting Jews in the former Soviet Union. That entire network has been put to use. HIAS, our organization that resettles refugees, is on the ground helping people. Both JCCs in Warsaw and Krakow, this organization Natan that I told you about, all were there saving lives. And let me tell you what they told me and also what I saw with my own eyes. Millions of people are flooding out of Ukraine. People at the train stations are packed together. There's no place to stand, there's no place to sit, there's no place to lie down, but they don't know where they're going. I was told that there are about 6,000 people at a time inside of the Warsaw train station, and they're moving through. And there are people coming with food and water and comfort and ideas of places to stay. The people who have come from Ukraine, many are carrying nothing, like literally nothing, like a plastic bag or a dog. And no change of clothes, no supplies, nothing. And I'll tell you in a minute more how I came to understand why that is. People who are there are almost all women and children because the men are fighting. Now, some women are fighting too, but the men have to stay and fight. And so almost everyone we saw had been ripped from a father, a brother, a husband, a son. And part of why they don't know where to go is because they don't want to leave, because they want to stay close. I heard from the people at the Warsaw JCC as they've mobilized their entire community. I heard from them that they were getting offers from other countries. We can take this many refugees, we can take this many refugees, and they couldn't find people willing to leave because they want to go home and they want to be with their family. The JCCs, both Krakow and Warsaw, decided to buy and rent RVs and just park them at the border and just provide soup and water and food and have people there who can help direct people toward empty beds. We also visited the Sochnut, the Jewish agency, which is the organization that helps people make aliyah. And so anybody who was Jewish who wanted to move to Israel could do that. And they had, within the first 2 weeks of the war, 2,000 people had already flown to Israel and become citizens of Israel. And 4,000 more were in process. I met a woman named Katya who came from Kiev and who got out with her 4-year-old and 9-year-old children. Her sister has a brand new baby, just had a baby and couldn't travel. And she was saying that her sister is currently underground with her baby in Kiev. And she was distraught. I met a woman named Olga and her daughter Sophia, who was 14. They had come from a town near the Russian border in Ukraine. She said that they woke up one morning and there were suddenly missiles. She could just see missiles coming at them. And they realized they had to run. And they took some things and they found a friend who had an underground place where they could stay. And so they went underground. But they couldn't come out again for 9 days and nights because the shelling never stopped. It was not safe to come out for 9 days and nights. And she said that people don't want to get bread or food. Like there's people offering soup and food and bread, but to go outside is dangerous. To stand in line is dangerous. So people are just underground. She said that their entire city is just flat. It's just gone. There's no water, there's no electricity, it's just flat. She said that like from that day when they saw the missile, suddenly their life crumbled and like it was something you couldn't imagine, like everything was over. And one day after the 9 days, there was a break in the shelling, and so they ran for it. And this is how I came to understand why people have nothing, is because there's no way to transport their things, not even anything. So they ran for it, and they got to the train station alive, and at the train station, she said it was like 1 million people, and they waited 8 hours to get on a train, and then they got on a train, and it was like, she said there were like 4 or 5 people per seat, and there was a bathroom on their train, which was really lucky because most trains did not have bathrooms, and the ride was 28 hours. And they eventually got to the near the border, and there's a hotline that the JDC has for anybody trying to get out, and they called the hotline, and they got a ride to the border from the train station. And at the border, people have to wait. For the border where we were, there were people who would wait for days and days just to cross because it takes a long time, and it was freezing cold. And people were dying in line, waiting to cross the border. I'm sorry to bring you all of this, but I feel like I need to. And so I saw 2 kinds of things. I saw the worst things that human beings do to each other. I saw people's lives destroyed. I saw massive suffering. And I also saw the greatest beauty of humanity. People pouring out to do whatever they could do, to help however they could help, opening their homes. It made me wonder, like, would we do that? Would I do that? Would I just open my house to people I don't know to come fill my house and sleep, everywhere? We went to a yeshiva in Lublin. It's called the Chachmei Lublin Yeshiva. It's very famous, actually. It was the biggest yeshiva in Europe. And it's now a hotel and a yeshiva. And we met this young woman named Agnes, who was a professional dance instructor, and was like in her 20s, and now is running a refugee center. And she said at the beginning, all the volunteers would just cry so much they had to leave, like they couldn't handle the stories. But now she's got a lot of volunteers, and they're working around the clock. And she showed me this area where they had all of the supplies that were coming in. And she said trucks were coming in with supplies, and there was an area with just shoes. And having been this yeshiva, we were at this yeshiva. This yeshiva is 10 minutes away from Majdanek, one of the death camps. And the shoes there and the shoes at Auschwitz, similar kind of thing, a whole bunch of shoes. Totally different story, right? So crazy to be in that place right near where we were. And here we have shoes that are about life, that are about helping people live, about love. Incredibly poignant. The thing I want to say to you is that these organizations on the ground, they need our support, and your donations will go to use. This outpouring of energy and love, it is amazing. You can feel the adrenaline. People are working around the clock and they're just all on, and it's not going to last. There's just no way. And now we've got 3 million refugees right now, and there are going to be more. It's going to need a long-term solution. And these organizations have a network on the ground. They've been doing it for a long time. They've got staff. And that's where we need to direct our resources. The JDC is doing, I was incredibly impressed with what the JDC was doing. I was incredibly impressed with all the agencies that I listed. And I'll send out an email soon with the list and links for all of them. I want to say one more thing, which is that at the border, I saw there were tents of from around the world, different religions and different countries, people coming with tents to just basically offer food support, help. And the first tent there, the people who got there first, right at the gate where you enter Poland, was Israeli Hatzalah. And Hatzalah means rescue. We asked them if they, mostly are there to help Jews, and they said, selection is what was done here 80 years ago. We don't do selection. We don't even ask if people are Jewish. We help everyone. So, a couple more things. You may have seen on social media there were some critiques of our trip that perhaps it was not ethical because we were taking beds for a couple of nights. We were, using beds and we were using food, and perhaps that was not the right thing to do. And we all contemplated that a lot. I would say that UJA, by the time of our trip, had already given $5 million to that region. And by now they've given $8.1 million, and that's going for a lot more beds and a lot more food. And I do think on balance, it was very much the right thing to do to go. Also because I can come back to you and tell you to give to JDC, to Highest, to Project Kesher, to UJA. There's another ethical question here, which is our media and we are so tuned into this. Our hearts are so broken by this. And people are asking, well, why do we care more about this than about other refugee crises in the world? Syrian refugees, Iraqi refugees, Afghan refugees, African refugees. Why are we tuned in here? Is it because these people are white? Is it racism? And I want to say overall, I think yes. I do think it's racism. And the answer is not to care less about this group of people. The answer is to hold ourselves to this standard wherever there is a humanitarian crisis, to have this kind of extensive media coverage, to have this kind of attention. And I want to say one more thing. We, Jews, have a particular reason to care about this. Many of us, myself included, come from here, come from there. Our ancestors were there. I'm named after a shtetl there. And there's still 200,000 Jews there. And the president of the country is Jewish. It is actually natural and appropriate for us to care more about that in concentric circles, to also care about others, but to also to care about ourselves. That's actually appropriate. And so I want to reject ideas that we should care less about this. We should not care less about this. We should care as much as we can care about this. And the last thing I want to say, and I want to talk about, is that we have been appeasing Vladimir Putin for 22 years. I read something by Bret Stephens in the Times, which I was surprised to agree with. And what he said was, before the invasion, we had the Russian invasions of Georgia, Crimea, and eastern Ukraine. We had the Russian carpet bombing of Aleppo. We had the use of exotic radioactive and chemical agents against Russian dissidents on British soil. We had Russian interference in US elections and massive hacks of our computer networks, the murder of Boris Nemtsov, and the blatant poisoning and imprisonment of Alexei Navalny. We have been appeasing him for 22 years, and it has not availed us. So, in the words of President Zelensky to our Congress, in the darkest time for our country, for the whole of Europe, I call on you to do more. You know what kind of defense systems we need. You know how much depends on the battlefield, on the ability to use aircraft, powerful, strong aviation to protect our people, our freedom, our land, aircraft that can help Ukraine, that can help Europe. And you know that they exist and you have them, but they are on earth and not in the Ukrainian sky. They do not defend our people. I have a dream, he said. I have a need. I need to protect our sky. I need your decision. I need your help, which means exactly the same as you feel when you hear the words, I have a dream. Because in the end, to sum it up today, it's not enough to be the leader of a nation. Today, to be a leader, you need to be the leader of the world. Being the leader of the world means being the leader of peace. Peace in your country doesn't depend on anymore only on you and your people. It depends on those next to you and those who are strong. And strong doesn't mean big. Strong is brave. And strong is ready to fight for the life of one's citizens and the citizens of the world, for human rights, for freedom, for the right to live decently, the right to die when your time comes and not when it's wanted by someone else. We tell a story this week of courage. We tell a story this week of bravery. We tell a story this week of risk and danger, of fighting for our lives. May we be grateful for what we have. May our sacrifices be about love. And may we find Esther's courage to stop tyranny and be the leaders of peace. Shabbat Shalom.